Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston, born and raised, H-Town Rebel, Space Cadet Sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, folks of all stripes, and distinguished guests, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul.
Hey y'all,
Salazar
welcome back to the
Jr.
Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for diehard Houston sports fans from a diehard Houston sports fan. I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite diehard Astros fan podcaster. I'm an actor, improviser, writer, creative multi-hyphenate, and of course, I'm a proud Houston native, and I have the receipts to prove it. You know, I went to Rockets games back when Turbo was dunking all over folks, just yamming the ball down. Remember Turbo? I spent the last decade or so as a comedy writer in Los Angeles, and now, well, I'm podcasting. That's what happens when you hit 10 years out here. You wake up one day realizing you have to moisturize every day because you live in a desert surrounded by the most beautiful people in the country, and you start podcasting. Welcome to said podcast. Space Cadet Sports was started as a passion project because most media is infuriating as a die-hard long-term fan of the Houston Astros. Here we aren't doom and gloom casual Astros fans, or worse, the national media haters. We love our team and root them on, but we also try to discuss the ins and outs of our team without too much homerism. The key word here is try. I'd like to welcome returning listeners, and of course, a warm welcome to any new listeners to what my brother calls the Paul Broad Pod Ball blog. Hey, brother. Always give a shout out to my bros here on the podcast. Check out the blog, by the way, spacecadetsports.substack.com for the full blog experience, or the full blog experience, depending on your interpretation of my pronunciation there, which is very lazy most of the time. I'm pretty mush-mouth. I should do more vocal warm-ups before I get on the mic. I'll try to get better at it, folks. We are recording this transmission here in sunny LA. I can say it because the clouds started to dissipate, but it's been kind of gloomy here lately. I'm joined by my co-host and co-producer, The Roz, to my Fraser. Carla, the dog, is here with me. She is not happy. It has been gloomy lately. She's been inside a lot. Listeners of the podcast know that she may get on mic from time to time. She has the hot takes on this podcast, and because she has a bit more attitude than normal, I pretty much just say bank on it. She will be on the podcast today. Today, folks, before we get to it, let's talk about what we're talking about on the podcast today. We are talking about your Houston Texans and their free agency legal moves, I should say. To say move is disrespect to Houston Texans GM Nick Caserio. We're going to see what the Texans have been up to lately in this very busy free agent market here for the NFL. We're also going to visit Dynamo Corner. That's right, before baseball season officially starts, we're going to focus a bit on our Dynamo here at the beginning of their season. And of course, we will get to some Astros news before the end of the podcast. But before we completely get into it, of course, my returning listeners know I want to give a huge good day, mates, to all of my listeners out there, but especially the Australian listeners. If you know any Australians, let them know that we are out here for them doing this podcast. If you know any Houston fans, let them know that we're preaching the good word out here, trying to spread the good word, the good vibes of Houston sports. Let them know we are out here, folks. I have so much to talk about. I don't even want to go into the long reoccurring bit that is wishing good day, mates, to our listeners. You could go back and find it yourselves if you really want to be in on the joke. Let's get to it today, folks. Nick Caserio has been very busy, so I have a lot to talk about, folks. Really, I think the main thing here to talk about today, number one with a bullet, is that the Houston Texans have traded away left tackle Laramie Tunsil, who, he's kind of been a love-hate type guy with the Houston Texans fans. There has been a lot of love for Laramie Tunsil. There has been a lot of penalties on Laramie Tunsil, which has equated to a lot of hate for Tunsil. However, at the same time, he is a dependable, I'll say dependable left tackle for a franchise in the NFL. He might not exactly be the, all pro left tackle that you'd want for a foundational cornerstone piece for your franchise. But at the same time, he is arguably a foundational cornerstone piece for any franchise. You need a left tackle like Laramie Tunsil, but arguably you would want that left tackle like Laramie Tunsil to maybe bring a little bit more. And I'm not trying to be too critical of Tunsil. I thought he did a great job for the Houston Texans. I thought, while penalties kind of plagued him and we kind of didn't like his lack of accountability in the press at times, I'm not. It's a tough gig, and I think, I've never been the left tackle for a NFL franchise, so I'm not trying to come too hard here. I'm just saying, I think really the reality of the situation is he kind of, to equate it to the Houston Astros, is he kind of is like Wandy Rodriguez, right? Wandy Rodriguez was a wonderful professional baseball player. He was just the exact epitome of an inning eater, just a professional major league starting pitcher. But there'd be times where he'd be absolutely infuriating because he would hope that the results would be a little bit more than what he was giving you. But at the end of the day, you would much rather have Wandy Rodriguez than not have Wandy Rodriguez to help anchor a starting rotation. And I think that's kind of where it is with Houston Texans fans and Laramie Tunsil. We were complaining about him so very much, complaining. And as soon as he's traded away, you're like, wait. I kind of like him here. What are we going to do now? So all of a sudden, Houston Texans fans, or at least the casual ones, have flipped the switch from we hate Laramie Tunsil to Laramie Tunsil was the best player ever, and what are we going to do without him? Let's talk a little specifically about the deal here instead of just I guess broadly, trading Tunsil to the Commanders here for 4 picks. We get Tunsil and we traded away Tunsil and a pick for 4 picks, I guess is more specifically here. I'm trying to look up my graphic. I actually made a graphic here. It's on Blue Sky. If you follow on Blue Sky, if you follow on Instagram or Threads, you might have seen it. But we essentially got 4 picks from the Commanders. Let's see here if I can do this while recording. It looks like I can. Okay. Yeah, so what I'm looking at here from my own graphic, Houston sends Laramie Tunsil and a 4th round pick for a 3rd and 7th rounder in 2025 and a 2nd and 4th rounder in 2026. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at here. I think a lot of people were hoping for a better package back, a package that doesn't just seem like a bag of picks that people don't really know how to value. I think that's really the thing for me. And I think the thing for a lot of other bloggers and people talking about, trades and trying to analyze trades like this, it's hard to really find the appropriate value for a draft pick, especially one in the future where you're not really sure what the draft class is really going to look like. Some of these later picks, you're really not sure how to evaluate them or what kind of value to put on them. So it's hard to really know if the Texans won the trade, if you will. But I think the real win of the trade here for the Texans is being able to move on from Laramie Tunsil and and kind of breathe some new life into this offensive line. They're also getting a huge amount of cap relief by trading Laramie Tunsil. The fact of the matter is, Derek Stingley Jr., Mario Edwards, CJ Stroud, these are the guys that have big contracts coming up that will need big extensions and will take up a lot of cap space. Having a guy like Laramie Tunsil take up a lot of cap space and not really getting the results you want out of him, I think the message was clear for the Texans. It's time to move on. Thank you for your service, Laramie Tunsil, but this line is going to get significantly better, and you aren't part of the future plans. It was definitely a tough pink slip for Tunsil. And, he was also traded away from Miami to Houston, So I think Tunsil is just kind of evaluated as kind of, like I said, like this Wandy Rodriguez, like this guy you would love to have on your offensive line. But as soon as you have him, you're kind of like, well, I wish he was a little bit better. And then as soon as you lose him, you're like, oh, man, he really was a foundational piece. I think the Texans... a lot of people are worried. The memers out there, the ex-boys, the sports radio, the sports radiates, the takes have been a little hot, being like, we're going to miss this guy. Who's going to protect CJ now? And I guess let's kind of get to it. Let's see what other moves they have made, obviously, besides the Tunsil trade. I think something really to look at when evaluating those hot takes from casual fans and from the internet people. D'Amico Ryans at the Combine, I pulled this quote up here to kind of help ease that panic. We have an official Space Cadet Sports Houston Astros panic meter here at the podcast. Do we have to get one going for the Texans? I mean, we're panicking fairly early here. I mean, we're panicking so early, it feels like it's more late in the football season than it is at the beginning of a football season, The draft hasn't even happened. But, I'm pulling up this quote to help quell your fears out there, H-Town. D'Amico Ryan said, quote, "Getting better protection for CJ Stroud is definitely a main point of emphasis for us. We know when CJ is protected, he has a clean We know when CJ is protected, he has a clean pocket. He's a pretty good quarterback." So obviously here at the Combine, when being interviewed, D'Amico Ryans is saying that getting better protection for CJ is a huge point of emphasis. They also, as mentioned, getting better receivers for CJ is a huge point of emphasis. I don't think this team trading away Tunsil is them saying, well, we're just going to get significantly worse and cheaper on the line. No, I think trading away Tunsil is this team saying, we're moving on. That offensive line last year was whack, and we're not going to do it again. We're not going to repeat it. So much so that we're trading away the cornerstone piece of this offensive line. And that's not it. Today, also, they announced that they made a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. The Texans traded for safety Gardner Johnson, and they traded away Kenyon Green. The Eagles also get a fifth-round pick in 2026, and the Texans get a sixth-round pick in 2026. So obviously trading away another big piece of the line here, Kenyon Green. But once again, it's another person that we weren't too sure how we felt about him as a fan base. There's been a lot of love, a lot of hate. It's been an up and down time for Kenyon Green with the Houston Texans. But with him gone, a lot of fans are like, well, who's taking his place, right? However, this isn't just a move to get rid of Kenyon Green. Obviously, the Texans are getting a player back in this trade. Gardner Johnson is looking to fill the void that was left by Eric Murray. Safety Eric Murray signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars on a 3-year, $22.5 million deal. So Gardner Johnson, we're getting him back to fill that void. It's not just a move to lose a player. We are looking to get a player too, and also looking to get some picks and compensation as well there. Also, on a related note, earlier in the week, I believe even last week, Shaq Mason was released. So this is a huge offensive line overhaul. Tunsil traded, Green traded, and Shaq Mason released. A lot of people are starting to freak out. They're starting to say, what are the Texans doing? What is Nick Caserio doing out there? My meme calling him Nick Cap Savio. He's definitely saving a lot of space in the cap. We'll get to that a little more as we talk. But what is Nick Caserio doing? There's no offensive line. Yeah, there's no offensive line today in March. We're making moves. We're obviously going to draft some offensive linemen. We're obviously going to get some people to replace the linemen here. Everybody's freaking out as if the Houston Texans have to play a game tomorrow and we have no offensive line. Yes, we have a lack of offensive linemen right now. But, call me crazy, but I think Nick Caserio is a professional general manager and he's aware of that. This is planned. They don't have offensive linemen on the roster right now because it's March. But by the time the summer is coming around and we're figuring out who is going to be on this roster, they will have options. I promise you. Now, I get it. It's a little scary. We're trying to figure out who those options are going to be. We're looking at the combine. We're looking to see who's available in free agency. The Texans signed a guard, Laken Tomlinson, who's looking to be a depth piece, but that name is not inspiring a lot of confidence in fans right now. Everybody's looking around to see who these pieces are going to be. I'll just put it this way. Nick Caserio knows more about football and more about the Houston Texans and their needs than I'll ever know. That's his job. Okay, so I can't sit here and be like, who are they going to get with my limited knowledge of offensive linemen and scouting of offensive linemen in the combine? I just don't know. I'm being frank with you folks. This is a fan podcast. I'm not going to sit here and BS you and start saying that I know some things that you don't know just for a hot take. We like to find some hot takes. We like to find some opinions on the podcast, but I'm not going to be out here manufacturing them. The fact of the matter is, I have confidence that this team will find some offensive line pieces that will be foundational for C.J. Stroud going forward. This is the beginning of a new era for this offensive line. We now have Popovich as the offensive line coach. We now have Kaylee as a new offensive coordinator. This is the dawn of a new era. The offensive line of last season is a thing of the past. And honestly, I'm glad they're kind of burying it. It was a tough one for CJ. It was a tough one to watch. We just kept feeling that if CJ had a better offensive line or some a little bit more receiver depth, that maybe he would have had a better season, wouldn't have had a slump season. Obviously, going into the year, I thought the line had some room for improvement. I was a little more bullish on the receivers, pun intended. We intend all of our puns on this podcast. We're not cowards. You cowards that don't intend your puns. I was very bullish on the receivers. I was a little wrong about that. I do like the depth. It just didn't really equate to what we wanted to on the field. So this season, they're looking to improve that line. They're looking to improve that depth. And, call me crazy, but I'm going to trust Nick Caserio a little bit more than the other bloggers and podcasters out there because, one, I'm one of them and I know that they're just looking for hot takes. They're looking to rile people up. Two, he's a professional. Nick Cap Savio is out here doing moves that I didn't even know were possible. He is, let's get to some of those moves here. Obviously he has been restructuring contracts. He restructured Nico Collins' contract and freed up some cap space. He's been, we have a whole meme for that one too. I've been not just doing doing podcasts and articles. We do have some memes. Houston Texans GM Nick Cap Savio cleared almost $16 million in contract restructuring moves just earlier this week, and he's trading for Christian Kirk out here. Christian Kirk was traded to the Texans for a 7th round pick. It looked like he was it looked like Christian Kirk was going to be released. The Texans jumped in there and traded for him before that happened. Christian Kirk was signed to a big contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he had a great season. And then he struggled with injuries for the past 2 seasons. The Jags were quick to get rid of him because of his big contract. And, just like the Texans are moving on from their offensive line, the Jaguars are moving on from Christian Kirk. There's plenty left in the tank for Kirk. I'm hoping, Look, I'm hoping, I'm praying, I have found religion because we need some receivers. And we're getting nervous here as Texans fans because if they're trading for Christian Kirk, if they're signing some depth receivers, we're worried that maybe that means Stephon Diggs is not going to be in the future for the Houston Texans. Maybe the Texans are letting him find a home elsewhere. And from my perspective, it does kind of feel like that. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. It does feel like Diggs is not going to be back on the team. So because of that, I have to be optimistic about Christian Kirk, his health, and his ability to play a number 2 receiver next to Nico Collins in this offense. Because frankly, I think we're going to need him. I don't know, unless they're trading for Cooper Kupp, unless they're really going to be all in for Diggs, unless they're doing a move that I'm not really anticipating, I think we're rooting on Christian Kirk. We also signed Braxton Berrios for a wide receiver, former Miami wide receiver. He was signed for a 1-year contract for $2 million. He's most likely going to be a slot receiver, a depth type piece with some return ability. So he's not looking to perhaps really push Christian Kirk for that number 2 receiver job. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of where the scouting sees Braxton there. I guess I'm assuming I'm on a first name basis with Mr. Berrios. No disrespect there. We also signed for receivers. We also got Justin Watson, Chiefs free agent and former Bucks wide receiver. He's more of a depth piece. This has been reported per Ian Rappaport, but there hasn't been like a big team announcement yet, but I'm pretty sure that is happening. What other moves has Nick Capsavio been up to? He signed defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins on a 1-year, $7 million contract. Defensive tackles Mario Edwards and Foley Fatukasi are free agents, or we'll get to that, or at least they were. And it looks like the Texans are moving on from Fatukasi at least. And, Rankins rejoined Houston after a 1-year contract in 2023 where he had 6 sacks. But Sheldon Rankins has had a tough couple years in Cincinnati, plagued by injury and illness. And once again, just like Christian Kirk, we're hoping that's past. We're hoping that's behind him, and he can have good health and be able to get some of those sacks like he did in 2023. Also, on the defensive line here, Derek Barnett returns to the Texans on a 1-year, $5 million deal. He led the Texans in defensive touchdowns, is what I'm trying to say. He led the team in defensive touchdowns last season. Definitely good to see him running. He's running back to the team. That's fun to see. And also announced today, defensive lineman Mario Edwards Jr. re-signed with the Texans on a 2-year, $9.5 million contract. So good to see Mario Edwards back on the team as well. So he's going to be there with Rankins, with Barnett as signings here for that defensive line to make sure we get that pressure still. We also signed cornerback. Sorry, let me try to... It's important that I pronounce things better when I'm saying the position. So, I'm saying cornerback here. Cornerback Tremon Smith to a 2-year, $7.5 million contract. He played a huge amount of special team snaps with the Denver Broncos. So he looks to be like a special teams player and some cornerback depth. Mr. Smith there. We also have linebacker Jake Hansen signing with the team on a 1-year, $2 million contract per Mike Garofalo. I think for the most part, these are most of the moves that I have on my list here. Obviously, we will have more movement for the Texans going forward, but I understand people are getting nervous. Who is going to be on this offensive line? Who are going to be the receivers for the Houston Texans? I know we're really worried about it as fans, but I assure you that Nick Capsavio is not just out there saving cap space. He is saving that cap space to use it. And we'll have to see how he intends on using it, but I'm just going to hit y'all with a quick calmate. I think things will be all right. We're going to be right back, folks. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with some Dynamo Corner, some Houston Rockets coming right up.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Welcome back, folks. All right, let's get to Dynamo Corner, and we'll talk some Houston Rockets. Dynamo Corner getting the B block today. I felt bad. Dropping Dynamo Corner from the A block all the way down to the end. But don't worry, don't fret, my pets. As Urkel once said, I definitely will get to some Houston Rockets here, but let's start off with the Dynamo. The Dynamo, as previously discussed, they had a big game against the Columbus Crew coming up, and they got a draw in that game. They got a point, which, I mean, that's essentially a playoff win for the Houston Dynamo right now, going into Columbus and not completely eating it. It's tough. The Columbus Crew, they're essentially the team that the Dynamo wanted to be, with a huge amount of very planned ball control and just really controlling the ball and running the pitch. Unfortunately, for the Dynamo, they did have a couple of opportunities. There was one Griffin Dorsey touch that you really wish they could have had back. That would have potentially won the game for the Houston Dynamo, but it just wasn't in the cards. The Columbus Crew really dominated this game, and it kind of was a testament to the Dynamo's hard play and grit that they got a draw out of this. We are dead last. The Houston Dynamo, they're dead last in the power rankings at 30 here, which is really tough to see. But after that first week, after match day 1 and 2, you understand why they have no hope from the national media right now. I see it. There's, like I was saying, they're a couple of pieces away. They need to get some pieces in here. I also said that they needed to perhaps change up their system. Maybe they needed to change up their formation, which they did. They did. Coach Ben Foster did for the draw result against Columbus. It says 4-3-3 here. In the it's like, I'm pretty sure they did. Am I going crazy here? But I guess it is 4-3-3. For some reason, I thought it was a different formation, but I guess I was wrong. But yeah, they did kind of tweak the back line a bit there in that game. Unfortunately, there was an injury against the Columbus Crew with Franco Escobar leaving on the defensive back line. But maybe since I was wrong about the formation, obviously, what I was right about, obviously, the Dynamo wanted to get more players in here. They signed midfielder Dwayne Holmes to a 2-year deal. Pat Onstad is very high on Dwayne Holmes, of course, in quotes here, saying that he's a very versatile player. While we're looking for some versatility, the offense really does need some help. I mean, the defense needs some help, and who are we kidding? The midfield needs help as well. So, I guess they're just looking for a versatile player here. For the Dynamo going forward, obviously, this team needs to kind of figure out what they're doing and who are their starters and what talent needs to be brought in to help this team compete. I definitely, I'm not trying to be too pessimistic, but it could be a really tough kind of rebuilding year for this Houston Dynamo. And that's tough to see because obviously I'm watching them more now, and it's tough to see them not do well when I'm paying more attention, especially seeing them not play. I guess it is the best game they played all season in their, lean jerseys there, the purple drink jerseys, but you want them to show up and show out a little more. We'll just have to see how much fight this team has in them and what moves the front office can bring in to help get this team to where they need to be. I'm not saying the season is over, but they have a lot of improvements to make in the Houston Dynamo corner, at least. Moving on to your Houston Rockets here, Speaking of feeling like we're jinxing teams by covering them, the Houston Rockets have had a tough run of it lately. They whooped up on the New Orleans Pelicans, that's for sure. 146 to 117 on Saturday since we last spoke about your Houston Rockets, but unfortunately they lost sensation Amen Thompson for about 2 weeks with an ankle injury. I believe that was an ankle injury. He was in a walking boot after the Pelicans game. A lot of fans are frustrated by this. A lot of bad takes are out there trying to say that the Rockets left Amen Thompson in for too long and then he got injured. Yeah, I think it's a bad take. I'll say it. And yeah, you can't argue sometimes with the logic of that statement that he was left in too long and he did get injured. And that's the making of a really good bad take, where on the nose and on paper it sounds logical. But the reason this is a bad take is because this is a young player. Hindsight is 2020. Of course, if we knew he was going to be injured, you would be like, maybe don't play him. But he was close to getting a triple-double. He is a young player that is getting his reps in. We're trying to depend on this guy, and you're trying to develop this guy. You want him to be out there and playing when he's feeling himself, when he's doing good, even if it is a blowout game. He doesn't have this huge injury history that we need to worry about him, right? Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm completely off, and we should have been handling him like Mr. Glass from Unbreakable. But I think it's really revisionist to say that the team was wrong to have him out there, especially, like even players are like, he would be out there. If the player wants to be out there getting the stats, cooking when he doesn't have a huge injury risk concern, you have him out there. So, obviously, I'm not saying we wanted Amen Thompson to be out there to get hurt, but how would we know that he was out there to get hurt and get an injury? Revisionist hindsight's 2020, and this revisionist take is just bad. But moving on, the Rockets also beat the Magic this past Monday on a manic Monday. They beat the Magic 97-84 for a nice 90s NBA throwback score. I'm aging myself here. Back in my day, we watched the NBA, and it was just angry and violent, and Ron Artest was allowed to punch you at least one time. That was part of the rules. JK, Meta, World Peace, I love me some Ron Artest. That is just a joke, folks. These are the jokes. But the Rockets ran out their double big lineup again with Steven Adams in that win. It's really nice to see that lineup. There's been a lot of fun lineups that head coach Ime Udoka has run out there this season. The Terror Twins coming off the bench. Now we have the double big lineup with Adams and Şengün playing at the same time, finding some success with that. And it really makes me happy to see that. That's something that we here at the podcast and then here in Houston, we're very excited about. Double big lineup with Şengün and Adams. And for injuries and just other concerns, I think that we really hadn't seen too much of that. And now that we're having the double big lineup and it's having success, we want more double big lineup. I don't think it's their starting lineup. I don't think it's a lineup you run out there for every single game no matter what. But using it in doses, I think is going to be highly effective, and we love to see it here at the podcast. Another sad thing that's happening with your Houston Rockets that we would just want to remind you, we're not a jinx here. We're just covering our teams that we love. Reed Thompson, the tax man, is out with a thumb injury that is most likely going to keep him from the Rockets for the rest of the season, as he is officially listed out for 4 weeks, potentially more. We'll have to see how the Rockets do for the rest of the season, what their playoffs look like, and honestly, if injuries keep stacking up, if they need Reed Thompson. I don't think that they'll really get to a point where they desperately need to plug Reed into a lineup if he's not completely healthy yet. I think they're looking at the long-term health for Reed. I keep saying Reed Thompson. Obviously I'm talking about Reed Sheppard here. My God, I don't know what's in my coffee today. I'm sorry. Apologies to the tax man. I don't want to get audited Okay, I don't know. I don't know where I pulled Thompson from, Mr. Sheppard, but please don't audit me. Please don't get at me in the comments. I don't know what brain fart happened to me where I have Thompson on my mind. Look, I'll be honest. My notes here when you're talking about this many sports and you have this many names, I'm sure this is a copy paste error. Maybe not on the page, but maybe in my brain. But Reed Sheppard, we love him here, and we know his name. We don't want to get audited, and we hate to see him gone from the Rockets. But he will most likely be out for the rest of the season. I don't think there's any way that the Rockets will be depending on Mr. Sheppard going forward for the rest of the season. But we need him back, and we hope that he gets completely healthy and is back next season. The Rockets will play the Phoenix Suns tomorrow. Usually I like to do this podcast on Thursdays, but because of all the free agent moves for your Houston Texans, we wanted to get at it today. The Rockets have one more game against the Suns this week on Wednesday, and definitely watching that game to see what the lineups are like. We're seeing how the Rockets do, and if they find some ways to keep winning games and keep their playoff hopes alive. We're going to take one more quick break, folks. Take one quick break for you and for me so I could learn these names. Good Lord, I'm Reed Thompson. I'm like making up created characters in NBA 2K or so. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm going to drink some coffee. We'll be right back to talk about your Houston Astros at the end of this podcast here, folks, so stick around.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Welcome back, folks. I got some coffee, more caffeine. I sorted out my notes. I double-checked some spelling errors there for you. I'm ready to go raring back here. But let's talk about your Houston Astros, folks. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on. The biggest thing right now would be Cam Smith. We've talked about Cam Smith all spring training long. We definitely love ourselves some Cam Smith here at the podcast. But right now, the biggest thing is Cam Smith going to make this team on opening day? He has been absolutely crushing it in spring training. A lot of fans are very excited about him. This prospect, he hasn't played in Triple-A yet. He played in Double-A last season. To see this success is definitely really exciting. But everybody is trying to figure out where he's going to be at the beginning of the season. So we've talked about it a lot here, but we'll briefly talk about it again if you want to hear in-depth thoughts. I'm sure there's other episodes and things you could check out as well in the past here that even have Cam Smith in the title. But we all love Cam, so we got to talk about him a little bit. I think I am kind of like Lunhow or James Click. I'm more of the traditional older GM that's like, you want that prospect to get a lot more time. You want him to have that season in Triple-A. You want him to figure out those breaking pitches at a major league level, and we'll bring him up so where hopefully we have when he's ready and when he could possibly make some noise in the Rookie of the Year for Rookie of the Year, and just to set him up for long-term success. However, I think Dana Brown is a little bit more aggressive than that. And, while the Astros have been very conservative in their past, I think Dana Brown could bring him up a little sooner than other GMs might have done. But while I say that, I also think the team doesn't want to put him on the squad just to ride the bench. There's no scenario where that's good for the team or good for Cam Smith. So I think the only way that Cam Smith makes a team is if he is an everyday player on the Houston Astros. And I've said it in the past, I'll say it again, if that's the case, something went terribly wrong with roster construction, and that's not good. I think he's way too important to be like on the Jake Myers or Chas McCormick track where you bring them up and you kind of have them figure out their stuff while they're playing baseball and they kind of do a platoon thing. You want him to develop while playing every day. And if you can't do that at the major league level, then they want to do that at the minor league level. I think you want a guy like Cam Smith to get significant playing time and not kind of ride the bench in a platoon situation. I don't think that he is going to be your everyday third baseman. I think that's going to be Isaac Paredes. I think Christian Walker's oblique injury might not be that bad. They're being super cautious here is what I'm thinking. Now, if that Christian Walker oblique injury is really bad, that opens up a roster spot for Cam. If that happens, that's bad, right? So I'm hoping that isn't the case. If Cam Smith does have an opening day roster spot at third, good for Cam. We're going to be rooting him on, but that's bad for Christian Walker and bad for the Astros' long-term success, with hoping that Christian Walker will be part of that long-term success. The other situation would be if Cam Smith plays right field. The reason why I don't want this is because Cam Smith hasn't played very much right field. He is a natural third baseman. He has been taking reps in the infield. He is just now really trying to learn the outfield. And yeah, Jose Altuve is just now trying to learn the outfield as well. But Cam Smith needs to find success and he needs to be able to field his position. I worry how he would fare as a right fielder learning to position in his rookie season with all the pressure on him, with all the bright lights on him, and he can't really make too many mistakes. That's a tough job. I don't want that for him. I want his confidence to be high so he can rake as an offensive player. If he gets that position, once again, I think this says something was very wrong with the roster construction for the outfield. I know we don't have a lot of optimism about the outfield, but still, that would mean a lot of bad things, or a lot of bad feelings about Jake Myers and Chas McCormick in that case. So I'm hoping that isn't the case. Moving on to Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve has been doing pretty good in left field. I know that people are very critical of him. They've been watching him play. There has been, an errant throw that they didn't that got a lot of negative attention there. But he has been making some good routes to balls. He had a really good catch. Coming close to the fence there, and while he was closing in, he made a really good catch. I think he could field left field at Minute Maid, but people are freaking out because he played second base for a game, and they're like, well, is the experiment over? Are we no longer going to try Jose Altuve in left field? Oh, I guess he really sucks. No. The team has said that it will be a platoon situation at left, and it will be a platoon situation at second. They said that he would not be the everyday second baseman, but they also said he wouldn't be the everyday left fielder. So Jose Altuve will most likely field both positions this season, unless, I guess, Ben Rogers or Guillorme or Dubon just really starts having an all-star season out of nowhere and just demands that second base spot. Anticipate Jose Altuve to play some second base. It doesn't mean the left field experiment is over or he completely sucks out there. It just means that they need his flexibility and versatility. The whole reason of Jose Altuve playing left field isn't to strand him out there because he sucks defensively. It's because this team needs flexibility in their roster, and the most flexibility they can get is by putting Jose Altuve in a position in the outfield, because offensively the outfield is not going to be is not projected to give him that much offense. So you move a player into second base and adjust Altuve out there to give the team flexibility. They haven't given up on it. This is just giving the team more flexibility. One more calmate to end the episode here. And that low flying sound of a LA helicopter is the signifier that it is time to wrap this episode up. So that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. Thank you so much for listening. Please smash those buttons for me: like, rate, review, subscribe, pop it, kick it, skip it. Please hit all of those buttons for us. We are a small podcast, and we are supported by listeners like you. Those buttons really do a lot to help grow this podcast, so thank you so much. Please share it with other H-Town hustlers, other Houston fans out there that need some love in this harsh world right now, need a little bit of a distraction, not to distract us completely so that we forget everything, but just to keep us sane, folks. Please check out the Substack at spacecadetsports.substack.com, where you can be a subscriber completely for free and get every article, every meme dump, and every podcast emailed to you directly. Or you can download the Substack app, click that you want notifications instead, and get the mobile app experience instead. I love that myself. If you want to let me know your takes, you could always comment on the Substack, or you could reach out on social media at Space Cadet Sports on Instagram and Threads, or at Space Cadet Sports on at spacecadetsports.bsky.social on Blue Sky, or you can call in. Obviously, we're not live, but you can leave us a message at speakpipe.com/spacecadetsports. Leave us a message. If it isn't too crazy or profane, it might even make the podcast. Definitely check me out at Paul Salazar Jr. on all social media platforms, at paulsalazarjr.bsky.social on Blue Sky. You can check out my other podcasts, check out my silly things that I do, my digital art, my videos, all that ridiculous stuff. Check that out. That'd be great. Thanks so much for listening, folks. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid. And as always, vamos Houston.